Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Unfiltered Unspoken with your host, Demetria, and your co-host, City Said. Today, we have another awesome guest on, Miss Debbie Griffiths, and she is going to talk about how she was burnt by a gaslighter. And actually, she has a book out called Torch, Burned by a Gaslighter. So Debbie stayed in this relationship for over a decade, and she went through a lot of traumas, and we're going to have her come up and tell you what she went through and how she overcame them. So let's bring in Miss Debbie Griffiths.
Well, hello. Thank you so much for having me, Demetria and Sid. My name is Debbie Griffiths. I'm a native Californian. I'm a mother of three kids. And for the last 20 something years, I have been in the homeowners association industry, with the last couple of years where I've been focused more on educating and certifying managers to manage homeowners associations in the state of California. So that's me in a brief synopsis of my life.
Yes, and our topic today here, the burned by a gaslighter. So, how what was the origin of everything? How did it start? Were you seeing these signs up front? How did they kind of suddenly start dropping in? On what you two had.
Sure. Mine started like 40 years ago. I had just graduated from high school. I went to a private all girls high school. So honestly, I didn't have a whole lot of experience with dating. And my first year of college, I met my husband, and I now realize that he did a lot of love bombing. But we got married, and I just totally didn't see the signs. I was 19 when I got married, thought I had found the one. Being raised Catholic, divorce was never an option. So it was like, till death do you part. And I almost died twice during that relationship. But it started about 40 years ago when I was about 18. And I was married for like 17 and a half years, where I finally woke up to the fact that I wasn't happy. And I didn't really know why. And I called my mom one day and I said, Mom, I'm not happy, and I don't know why. And she said, we have been praying all of these years for this phone call. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, we've always thought that he was controlling and too controlling, and he's kept you, from us. So that was one of the things that I realized was the isolation. And I actually started questioning things from an article that was in the National Woman's Magazine that I picked up at the grocery store, because the cover had this really neat recipe that I thought I would try. So I brought the magazine home, went to saw the article, and basically it was 25 years ago was no more as verbal abuse. And I thought, well, that doesn't apply to me. Wasn't interested. Focused on some of the other articles. And a couple of days later, went back to that article, and I started seeing some of the red flags that she was describing in her article. Mainly that when he would come home from work, her stomach would flip. And ironically, that caught my attention because the day I got married, right as I was beginning to walk down the aisle, my stomach flipped. And my dad reached over and he said, you don't have to go through with this if you don't want to. Well, having 200 pair of eyes looking at me, starting to walk down the aisle, and knowing how, the money and stuff that's been spent, I wasn't going to say no at that time. But that's what got me to start thinking about it. And then my ex at the time was a salesman, so he'd leave Monday and come back on Friday. And when the garage door would open, my stomach started flipping, and I'm thinking, no, this can't be. So it was through a series of these things that I went and sought therapy, professional therapy. And started sorting things out. And once I started realizing that I have codependent tendencies and trying to then determine my boundaries, then things escalated a lot more to the point where I became severely depressed and was suicidal. And I did attempt suicide. And I woke up one morning in the psych ward, and my doctor came to me and he said, "Your environment is making you sick." And so that was a turning point for me, that I knew I needed to make a decision, because I wasn't going to sink. I wasn't going to sink any lower than what I was already at. So.
Oh, wow. So, can you tell us some of the things that you went through, like some of the abuse that he caused, like just to give the audience an example of if it was domestic abuse, verbal, physical, and when did it start?
The marriage, the relationship was primarily verbal abuse, gaslighting as we now know it today, which is a form of domestic abuse. There was an incident where he hit me. There was another incident where he hit one of my kids. And then I don't want to downplay that, but as I say, it was primarily verbal abuse and the gaslighting. And as I looked back, it started before we ever got married. We were dating, and we both, as I say, we both went to the same college. We met like in the first semester of college, and we would meet each other like around 7:30 in the morning, and then he primarily would come to my car and we chat, listen to music, for 15, 20 minutes before we needed to get to class. Well, one day he pulled up and he just sat in his car, and I didn't know why. And he just sat there, and I just sat there, and he wouldn't talk to me that whole day. And I think even the next day, and it finally got to a point, and I said, "Well, what is the deal here?" And he said, "Well, do I have to do all the work? Can't you come and sit in my car?" And I said, "I didn't know it was a problem. You didn't say anything, you didn't say anything. We didn't talk about this. And so you're giving me the silent treatment." And so, I apologized, and that's probably what I remember, except to as it got closer to the wedding, and I wanted to, have my hair done and have my nails done, that kind of stuff. And he absolutely forbid me from having nail polish. And I got to the point where at least he agreed to clear nail polish. I personally don't like my hands, so I was just conscious of how I looked. And like any bride, you want to look your absolute best. That's the day you're a princess. And I wanted to be a princess. And, I look back now, and he was trying to take that away from me. Early on, and right after we got married, I want to say it was probably within a couple of months, we had a small earthquake. I live in Southern California, so there was a small earthquake. I hate earthquakes, and he was gone. It was a Saturday. He was working, and this was the day before cell phones and things like that, so we didn't have easy way of getting a hold of anybody other than landlines. And so I called my parents to see if they were okay. I was a little scared, and he comes home and like whispers, "Who you talking to?" So I told him, and he like got angry, very angry, to the point where I had to end the conversation very quickly, and he hit me, and then was so angry he put his fist through the wall. And he said, "You just never contact your parents for anything. You need to get a hold of me." And I said, like, "Well, how can I get a hold of you? You're working." I was scared. And he said, "It doesn't matter. You just don't talk to anybody." So there were several things during the marriage. I mean, don't get me wrong, there were periods when things were okay, things were good. But there were other periods that, whether he was going through some stress at work, then the cycle would begin of the criticisms. like, you shouldn't wear this, and why can't you cook? Throwing his food across the room. He didn't, thank God he didn't throw the plate. There was one incident. We were living in Georgia, and a tornado was scheduled to come that night, or severe thunderstorms with possibility of tornadoes. It was an offshoot of one of the hurricanes that came up the Gulf. And he decides to take off to North Carolina, leaving me with 3 kids and 2 dogs. Now, we had a basement, so I took everybody. We slept downstairs in the basement. And during the night, I woke up and I heard that sound, that train sound that everybody talks about when that tornado's about ready to come. And I'm like, oh my God. And my kids were sleeping. And I was like, do I wake them up or do I just let them sleep and just let them sleep and rest? And so all I remember doing was praying so hard. It's like, Lord, protect us. And whatever you do, whatever is meant to happen, please just keep us all together. Whether it's dead or alive, keep us all together. And for some reason, he gave me such a sense of peace that I literally fell back asleep until the next morning, about 7 o'clock, when I got a phone call from a neighbor asking if we were okay. Other houses got hit pretty badly. And he happened to call, because he took off that night and didn't stay with us. I found out later he had somebody else on the side. But he eventually called and then started yelling at me. And then I went, no. You come home. You need to come home and bring a chainsaw. We had some downed trees, but nothing hit the house. We were very, very fortunate on that. So those are just some of the incidents.
Wow. And
Okay. Sid, and we do have a question, Sid, if you want to ask. Okay.
Yep, I was gonna get to that. That's terrible for one, especially, knowing what was going on, the danger as to what was going on, and then what he chose to do. And it kind of seems like, once the storm was over, it kind of provided you clarity, mentally as well. So I want to ask, and I want to incorporate, one of our viewers' questions here.
Sure.
So, just with what you have told us, it seems like your parents they were kind of hip as to what was going on. They could somewhat sense it. They've giving you some inkling that they're sensing what's going on. When your dad told you at the wedding, you don't have to go through with this. Was there ever a moment where they put their foot down, or they just kind of let you feel your way through it? What did they generally have to say about everything going on?
Again, I was 19, so they felt, I was 18, so it was like of age to make those decisions. They felt that if they were to say something or forbid the marriage, that they were afraid that I might rebel and, just take off. I mean, I was not that kind of kid, but they just didn't want to they didn't want to take that chance. So in some ways I was kind of brought up, and I think I've done this with my kids as well. At some point in time, you have to let your kids make decisions, right or wrong. And you have to let them make their mistakes by their decisions. Some of their decisions are going to be good. Some of their decisions might not be good, but that's how you learn and that's how you grow. And there's a saying I saw one time, and I really tried to incorporate this with my own kids, is there are 2 things you can give your children. One is roots and the other's wings. So you've got to provide that strong foundation in the early years. And then so that as they grow and make those decisions, they know more right from wrong. Now, in my case, my strong foundation was really based on my faith. And you'll see this intertwined in the book, but I would not be here without the grace of God. And, yes, has always been a perfect, straight, narrow path? No. I deviated off the path, but, I'm like one of those lost sheep. He found me and he's got me back on that path. So, and I want to kind of touch on something with my parents too. They suspected, as we got married, it was in Southern California. And then at some point in time, we moved to Georgia. That's where his family resided. And he wanted to be closer to his family where he eventually found work. Now, that geographical distance created more isolation. And as I really was only like really allowed to talk to them like once a week, it was primarily my mom would call, just basically checking on the kids. I never really opened up about anything other than, okay, so-and-so's got a cold this week. They started school. Other than the basic things, I was the one who kept things close to the chest. And I look back now, and the reason is I was walking on eggshells. I didn't want to start anything because I already knew he hit me once for reaching out to my parents. So I was always very guarded when it kind of came to that. But I think they knew that. They could sense that. I think a mother kind of always senses these things. So it's when I finally made that phone call, I think it was about 17 years in the marriage. And my mom said, we have been praying years for this. They thought he was controlling, but they didn't know to the extent. And they didn't know some of the stuff that I had endured, I had put up with.
Yeah, wow. I have a quick question.
Sure.
Can you explain to the audience, how did you live a day-to-day life going through the traumas? How did you face society to get up every day through everything you went through?
You mean before I got divorced or after I got divorced, or all through? All of it?
During the traumas, going through the traumas, getting up every day, going to work, taking care of the kids, like just how.
Sure. Well, for one thing, I did not go to work. He did not want me to work outside the house. Again, that was another form of isolation, which is one of the big red flags of gaslighting. So, and I really wasn't allowed to have friends, or if I started talking too much to somebody, he would find fault with that person. So again, you just kind of learn to kind of keep to yourself. Having the 3 kids, kids keep you busy in and of itself. So, you find that regular routine, that structure. And again, not every day was a bad day. There could be years when, a couple of years in a row when things were okay. We did move around a lot, kept us busy, kept us focused. But as really after the last one was born, my daughter, because she was 4 when I separated, things really started deteriorating. He did not want to have too much with my second son. He favored the oldest one, and then he started getting more and more involved in work. So there was a physical and emotional distance to some extent. But he would finish his work like at 1 a.m. and then come upstairs, and I had already been to bed, and then, wanted, expected sex. And it's like, you're waking me up, why don't you come to bed, at normal time? Why are you working this late, and you're ignoring your family. So I think for a lot, my survival in a lot of things was denial. But it got to a point where I started getting physically sick. For one thing, I had some wisdom teeth pulled out, and it was like a Friday afternoon or something. I came back, I felt okay, so I finished cleaning the house because there was company coming. And a couple of days later, I literally collapsed, and I called the dentist office and I said, I really don't feel good. I don't know, I don't understand. And she said, did you rest or anything after you getting the wisdom teeth pulled? And I said, no, I felt fine. Didn't have any pain, nothing. I just went and did my own routine. She goes, no. She said, you have the anesthesia that we give you, because I was completely put out for the procedure. it stays in your system for a couple of days and you need to, rest and kind of, rebuild out. And I said, okay. And then I want to say when my daughter was about a year and a half or two, I developed pneumonia. Actually, my one son developed pneumonia and I caught it. And my husband was camping. He decided to go camping, even though I was sick and my other son was sick with the oldest one. They were very involved in the Boy Scouts. So he went camping, even though I wasn't feeling good. Middle of the night, I woke up in a sweat and I knew I had a fever. So I called him and said, I think you need to come home. I'm really not well. And he got angry. And so I waited till the next morning. I had a neighbor. I contacted a neighbor. She watched the other two while I drove myself to the hospital. Or it was a small town in Georgia. And they took x-rays and stuff and they said, you have pneumonia. And I said, okay, just give me the antibiotics. I've got kids at home, or, my neighbor's watching them. And she said, no, you don't understand. It's completely in your one lung and it's halfway in your other lung. You are very sick. You need to be admitted. And I was like, I can't be admitted. Who's going to take care of my kids? So I finally had to break down and call my husband and said, you do need to come home now. They're admitting me in the hospital. So it was 3-4 days in the hospital before I came home, and like another month of just recuperating, because it takes a lot out of you. If you've not ever had pneumonia, it takes a lot out of you. And I was in my mid-30s at that time. So I was fairly young and fairly healthy, but I do remember that. And then it really wasn't long afterwards. Things kind of kept spiraling downhill. That's when I started becoming depressed, went to, to see the doctor, and in the medication that they were giving me couldn't get into my system and help me fast enough because I was spiraling so far down. I likened it to those roll top desks that have those pigeonholes. And after 17 and a half years, there was no more room in those pigeonholes to put all of my feelings, all of the hurt, all of the pain, and it came out. And, the doctor said that depression is actually anger turned inwards. And I never understood that until I wrote the novel. And I went, oh, I really was angry because I did not leave a suicide note. And I did that I realized I did that on purpose. Because if I was successful, I wanted people to know what he did to me. And that's how angry I realized I was.
Definitely. That's heavy. That's really heavy. And it's unfortunate that, even in times when you are literally physically sick, you can't even depend on your better half.
Right.
So I guess moving forward here, what I guess turning events or chain of events sparked the, I'm done, this is my final exit here?
Waking up in that psych ward and the doctor saying your environment is making you sick. And I knew what he meant. And I had my mom and sister actually flew out. I was surprised that my ex even contacted them, but they did. They came out, and I told them what happened. And I said, look, I need to get a divorce. I know this is painful. This is not really what I want, but I can't live with him anymore. I can't allow him to do this to me anymore. And they totally agreed. And so, by the grace of God, got everything worked out. I had to find a job because I had not worked. So it's like, well, what do I do? I had to find, a school for the kids. I had to find a place to live. He wasn't going to leave. I did not want any I really didn't even want any part of that house. There was just too many negative emotions, feelings, memories. I just wanted to distance everything. And his parting words to me as I put the last of the stuff in the car were, you will never make it and no one will ever love you. And by that time, that was definitely the wrong thing to say to me, because I knew I was going to make it. I knew I had what it took to make it. And I did. Was it easy? No. The oldest child was 14 at the time, so he decided to live with his dad, to stay with his dad, and the state allowed that at that time. And so the other two came with me. But I dealt with some parental alienation with the oldest one. And it took many, many, many years to rebuild that relationship. But I took on the other two. I stayed in Georgia until my oldest one was turned 18. He had gone to college, and I knew he was out of that house because I know he was starting to get some of that treatment, although he wouldn't admit it. And once my ex moved out of state, my son was out of that house and in college and kind of on his own. That's when I moved back to California, because that's where my family was. And that's where I knew I could get more emotional support. By that time I had a job and I was taking care of the other two kids, raising them. And the one thing I did try to do was get them, family counseling and stuff it was a lot we all went through, to try and get all of us to heal. And so we'd have a better chance at not repeating all of this. I did not want them to ever be victims, and nor did I want them to victimize others. I wanted it to stop, and I knew it needed to stop with me.
You're muted.
I apologize. So we have a question.
Sure.
The audience wants to know, how did you leave?
How did I leave? I got the courage one night to go downstairs to his office, and I sat on the couch and I said, we need to talk. And he goes, about what? And I said, about us. And he said, well, what's the deal? And I said, well, I'm not happy. He goes, well, that's your problem. And I said, no. I'm not happy in this marriage. That's our problem. And he was stunned. And he tried to deny it, tried to find excuses. And I said, no. I said, you don't understand. I'm done. I want a divorce. I'm not going to live like this. So he did agree to some counseling, couples counseling. I agreed to it because I figured I needed to know I did everything that I possibly could before this ended, but I knew it was too late. So we went to counseling, and he almost went to the other extreme, trying to, more like with the love bombing, just like constantly in my face, like, well, see, I'm doing this. This is what you want. Aren't you happy now? It's like, no. He just wasn't getting it. And I just said, this isn't going to work. I said, this just isn't going to work. I'm not happy, and this isn't making me happy. So that's how, I got the courage. He decided to go to North Carolina for a little while and kind of work from there while I looked to find a place. And then he came back while I was trying to get things out of the house. And that's, my last Carlo with the last of the kids, telling him goodbye. That's when he told me what he did. So.
Yeah, I'm glad that you were able to, you found what you needed to get out of there. So, what was life like after that? What was your new normal?
Oh, my new normal. Well, I was still living in Georgia, so we were trying to do the every other weekend and Wednesday night visitations and stuff. It didn't really work out too well. Half the time he didn't, he would show up when he wasn't supposed to show up. I never got to really see the oldest one. He was playing playing games, at the end of the day. So once he finally moved out of state, now that was another 4 or 5 years. That's when I moved back to California. And for about a year, things were okay. It gave me a chance because the kids didn't have any really visitation or anything with them. And then he would come out after that. He would come out like 1 week out of the year to see them. And it would take me a couple of weeks after their week visit or overnight visit. He would only kind of see them for a day or two, take them out to dinner and badmouth me. Every chance he could, badmouth me. And even the psychiatrist, the family counselor that I was taking the younger two to, told him. He actually barged into her office one time, no appointment, no anything, and didn't understand. And she said, "You have got to stop bad mouthing their mother. What you're doing is you're eventually going to alienate yourself." And it took a few years, but that's exactly what happened. Raising the other two, my youngest one, she was only 4 when I left, so about the only thing I noticed from her, she was more like on the clingy side. My middle one, my second son, he exhibited a lot of anger issues. A lot of anger issues, and he eventually went down the illegal drug road for a couple of years, and that entailed putting him in rehab a couple of times. And once he was about 18, and the third time he started with using drugs again, I literally kicked him out of the house. I said, at this point, I can't allow this in my house. You're an 18, you're an adult, and I have to protect your sister. She's still a minor, and I don't want her around this stuff. So I kicked him out. And about a couple of months later, I get a call from the sheriff's office about 2 a.m, telling me to come down to the sheriff's office. And although he was not arrested or anything like that, apparently he and his roommate were victims of being held up with a gun at their hands. There must have been a drug deal gone bad. And by the time we got through the sheriff's office and everything, it was really, really late. They didn't want to go back to their apartment. So I took him back with me, and I said, "This is just overnight. The next morning, we're going to go down. I'll find a halfway house someplace else for you to stay, but you are not staying with me permanently. It's just too late tonight to deal with all this anymore." And the next morning, I found him on the patio sobbing. I mean, gut-wrenching sobs. And I said, what's going on? And he said, "All of these years, I have been angry with you, and it really should have been Dad." I said, "I know." I said, "I know." And I said, he doesn't want us to be happy. He doesn't want us to make it. And I said, anger, the way you're using anger, quite honestly, it's a sin. Even Jesus got angry, but he didn't sin when he got angry. And I said, you can't take it out on you. You can't take it out on anybody else. If you want to, what's the best revenge? Get even. And to get even, you make something of yourself. You be happy. That's the best revenge. And he decided right then and there to go into the Army. And he had dropped out of high school, which was gut-wrenching for me, because it's like nobody that I knew of in my family dropped out of school, right? So he put himself back through high school, and not just with the GED, he got a high school diploma, enlisted in the Army, and served in the Army with 1 year in Afghanistan. So he served for 12 years, and he just recently got out, and I couldn't be more proud of him and how he turned his life around.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
It's thank you for showing transparency, how his dad's got gaslighting and domestic violence created anger with your son. And that's a big piece of what we talk about, is how kids watch the traumas that their parents go through which traumatizes the child and creates more anger issues. So thank you for being very transparent about that.
Well, you're welcome. Yeah, I'm here to help others. This is. I just want the violence to stop. It's got to stop.
Mm-hmm. So I have another question. Can you
Sure.
tell folks how you overcame the gaslighting piece to start your journey to healing?
Therapy. You know, once the first round of therapy, I learned about codependency and learning how to define my boundaries. And it's a work in progress. And my faith is the other thing that has kept me going, getting back in the word, going back to church, getting back into the Christian community. That has all helped. I've been in and out of therapy, on and off throughout the years. I, finally feel good to a point, and then move on to the next round, and then I find something will trigger it, and I go back in and talk about it for a few sessions, and it's like, okay, no, I understand. I think the healing always comes with, it's a day by day thing. Some days are better than others, and it's just one step forward. I he stifled me. I was not really allowed to grow, to be my own person. And I don't ever want that again. I mean, if we have got to continually grow, we've got to continually work on ourselves, and learn new things and meet new people. And it was just a combination of all of that, getting back in the workforce and learning those skills. And I put myself back through college, and I got a college degree. So was it easy? No, but it was just one step at a time. And I really look back on that time after the divorce and moving forward. And yes, there were challenges and stuff, but um, you I couldn't be happier with the progress that I've made, that my kids have made. And I feel really good about the future. If I hadn't have made the progress that I did, I don't think I could finally have sat down and write a book. Now, I kind of joke that it took me 5 weeks to write something that was 25 years in the making, but it was time. And God told me it's time. And he's the one who gave me the words to write the story. It's a fictional tale based on true events. Two women, one younger, one older. The older one has gone through it. The younger one thinks that there's something going on, not sure. And there's a little bit of tragedy in there, but they help each other through, through to the end of the story. So I wanted just to kind of outline the red flags and the subtleties. As I say, for years, or there could be a long period of time when things were okay. And then all of a sudden something would trigger him, and it's like, well, what did I do? And then you feel like you're walking on eggshells, and if I say that, is he going to blow up? If I don't say that, is he going to blow up? So, and again, it got to the point for me, and I allowed that. I know now I will not ever let myself get to that point again, of being to the point of being suicidal.
Definitely, and that's great that you were able to, come out of that, smarter, wiser, stronger, definitely. Um, so with the children at this point now, do they know, the intricacies of what has been going on, or what had been going on? I know, some have come to the realization that, it wasn't all you,
Right.
in the situation, but, have you spoken to them, or, have they found out in other ways, the details, and do you, use that kind of as a guide to, maybe advise them in their life and their relationships, make sure that they're not extending that same, amount of trauma on other people in their lives? Where is kind of their mental headspace about it?
Sure. I have been very open with my kids on this book. In fact, my daughter read it, And some of the incidents that involved the other two, I let them know exactly what I was going to talk about and what I said. And they were aware of a lot of this stuff. Some of it, especially after the divorce and separating, they had some good memory of some of this stuff. Some of it prior, well, my daughter did not, because she was only 4 at the time I left. But my oldest one for sure remembered a lot of stuff, and probably could even tell you some more things. But the biggest thing, there's a couple of things I was going to say here on this, is my oldest one with the alienation. It was pretty bad. It took many, many years for him to even talk to me. And what I would do is reach out to him once a week and just say, hey, just checking in. A lot of times it would go to voicemail, and, he wouldn't call back or anything. And then all of a sudden, things started, he would chat, and then, in the last several years, things have gotten better. Now, this last August, he turned 40. And he lives in Virginia, and I went there to visit him and celebrate his 40th birthday with him. Now, I hadn't seen him in 15 years. That's how bad the alienation was. And that's how long it took to work to rebuild that relationship. And so we're at a good place now. I couldn't been, we're both have great memories of the visit, would like to, obviously like to do it again. My middle one, he's the one who just got out of the Army. Ironically, he's really not interested in having a relationship. He's a little bit tainted, I would say. My daughter recently married. She's been married now for a year, but we've had those conversations, because she's asked me, she goes, well, what do I look for? How do I know? And I said, the only advice I could give you is see how he is in different situations, go to different places and dates, see how they are, how they act in traffic. Definitely in Southern California, we have traffic. So, does he get angry? Does he have the patience to get through it? How does he handle that? How does he handle a situation you're in a restaurant and you don't get the food that you want, or it's cold, or it's not cooked to your liking? How does he treat that server? Does he kind of blow up? Does he respectfully say, hey, this isn't really what I wanted. Can you fix this? Check the different situations and seeing how they act. How do they treat their parents? How are they around their friends? Observe, keep your eyes open and observe. And that's about the best advice I could give her, or any of my kids.
Definitely. And I know they've kind of had their, twists and turns on the road of life, but I'm glad everybody is in a better headspace now. I'm glad, I know that really hurt, having to not only go through that, and I'm sure you did what you could to shield them, from what was going on, to, them ultimately turning on you. But, in the same process, I know that you understand the mental acrobatics that go on, and how he was so able to even cloud your judgment. Of course, someone that is required to listen to what he says, in a sense, could be so fooled themselves. So I know it hurt, but that that took strength to not lash out yourself, or even badmouth him to the extent that you could have, based on what was going on. Because that, to me, I would have kind of felt helpless, like, just out in the water, like, what do I do? Like, how did this get here? How could they not see that I did all of this for them? But I'm glad everybody is on a common accord now.
Well, trust me, there were a few nights when I cried myself to sleep, or I'd talk to my mom or talk to my sister, and like, why is he doing this? And, I had you have to have an outlet somewhere. I just kept it private and separate from the kids. I was, again, you're trying to shield them as much as possible, because I was the end goal was to get all of us to heal and be at a better place. But did I have my moments? Yes. And even when my son was going going down that drug road, and I was just fit to be tied. And one of my favorite scriptures is, "Be still and know that I am God." And I'm like praying one day. I'm driving. I was going to a property for an inspection, and then like, God, what is there something I'm supposed to be doing, or is this something you're supposed to be doing? I need to know. Well, I turned this corner, and on this huge billboard are the words, "Be still," on a billboard. And I'm like, okay, you got my attention. You've got this. I've got to trust you. And by his grace, he did. He fixed it. And again, it's without my faith, I would not be here today. He gets the glory.
That he does. That he does. Also have a question. What, I know that, eventually he moved you all kind of across the state where his family was. How was that dynamic for yourself? Were they, pleasant to you? Did they enable what was going on? Was there anyone that, you kind of held close that kind of helped you through that situation? What was that structure like? And how was your relationship with your in-laws?
As I look back, oh, they enabled him. Very much so. And I actually, I think he learned that behavior from somebody, one of his parents or something, but I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist, so I can't comment more on that. But, they were always pleasant enough. They said they treated, like I was a daughter, but, I look back and, there was a lot of criticism. If I didn't wear something or didn't say something right, there was some criticism. So, you just kind of ignore it. And, as I say, I could just kind of ignore it, because at the end of the day, it was more of us, was trying to have the kids have a relationship with their grandparents. So I'm really good at doing this to myself, put me on the back burner. So, and I think women are really good at doing this. We put ourselves on that back burner. We take care of everybody else but ourselves. So, and that's what I did. But you can only be on that back burner for so long, and you're going to give. And I gave. So.
So, let's we're at 48. So I wanna also bring to the audience like the positive pieces of it. What are you doing today in the community? Because I know there's a lady, Nicole. You are 50% of your book proceeds go to supporting Nicole. Can you tell us a little bit about Nicole's nonprofit, and just to bring the audience some awareness of some of the good things that you are doing and contributing back into the community to bring awareness to domestic violence?
Oh, sure. Thank you. The first thing was I wrote a book about it. Obviously, you can autograph copies are on my website at www.brokentoboldness.com. You can also purchase it on Amazon. As you said, 50% of the book sale profits are being donated to the Nicole Cooley Foundation. Nicole was brutally murdered 17 years ago by her boyfriend, who took a claw hammer 13 times to her skull. And the family has been in the process of getting signatures he's up for parole. The murderer is up for parole again in May 2023. So they're trying to get signatures to go to present to the parole board, requesting that he stay behind bars. So we have an event coming up next Saturday, actually, January 21st from 3 to 5 in Cathedral City, California. That's in a desert community out in the Coachella Valley. So we're going to have an event, domestic violence event, bring awareness, get signatures. There's going to be some speakers. Another lady and I will have our books there. Some of the local resources will have information and stuff as well there. So we're just trying to raise awareness in that community. Last October, if you already know this, I'm sure, but October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I actually went to my city council and had them proclaim October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So I got the city to have that proclamation. And actually, next month is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. That's going to be in the month of February. So I intend on going to some city councils and asking them to proclaim February as Teen Dating Domestic Violence Month. So again, it's just about bringing awareness. My website, I've got some resources and stuff on there. You know, the statistics are kind of staggering that on average, it takes a person 7 times to leave an abusive relationship. And, you know, it's hard. You know, that push-pull that, you know, sometimes you get to a point, and I know I had these feelings too, that sometimes life would be easier if I just went back. Well, you just got to keep fighting and don't go back. Just find the resources within yourself. Reach out to like the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Ask them for help. There's local resources in your own community to get that help, but don't go back. Don't go back. You will survive, you will be happier, and you will heal.
And thank you for bringing transparency to that, because unless folks are in a narcissistic, gaslighting relationship, they don't understand. And what the abuser does is he makes the victim look like they're crazy and something's wrong with them, and that the narcissist can show this beautiful, bubbly attitude, but in reality, they're abusing to the point that people just don't understand, because they make themselves look like the good person. So
Right. If anybody has, or maybe you should see, there's a great example of gaslighting. It's an old movie. It's from 1944 with Charles Boyer and Ingrid Bergman, and it's called Gaslight. And it shows the love bombing that Charles Boyer did to get Ingrid Bergman to marry him. And then all the little subtleties, including turning down the light, the gas lights that were in the house, on and off, to deceive her and make her think that she was slowly going crazy. It's a good movie, to actually show that as an example of what happens.
Yes. So if you did not hear that resource, make sure y'all go check that out. A lot of what transpired with you transpires with a lot of people, where it's not always in a physical sense, and you don't really make sense as to what's going on until either it's too late, or just after you've given years of your life to that. So try to really figure out what goes into that, what goes into everything about that, so that you can make sure you're not in situations involving that, because
Right.
it's very easy to get into. People are charming, people are very smart. They study you, they know what to say. We're in the age of social media, so people could have literally looked at your whole life before saying anything to you, and you just are so smitten by the details that they notice, thinking that it's something healthy, and it's not. So
Right.
learn the spectrum. It's not always black guys and being in the hospital and all of that. It's not always that. There's a lot of chaos and words and feelings and emotions and things like that. So learn the spectrum. I do agree.
Yep.
I do agree. Now, with your book, has that, before going live with it, has that been something that, how has your family read it, or how is everybody taking to it? How is everybody, you know, it's one thing for them to be supportive, you know, just knowing what you have gone through and you went to them, but to put it out on a, you know, bigger scale, people feel a little differently sometimes. So how's everyone close to you kind of, you know, taking that and what you're doing with your voice and your experience?
They've been very supportive. As I said, my boys didn't really want to read it, but they're very aware of any incidents in there that you know that could closely resemble what they went through. My daughter has completely read it. Her her comment was, "Mom, you know, I did not know how I did not know the extent of how you were feeling through all of this." And I said, "Megan, how would you? You know, you were a child. I was protecting you from all of this. It wasn't, you know, my job was to take care of you. And I tried to protect you as much as possible." Now, my sister read it, and her comment was, "I am so sorry you went through all of that." She goes, "I had no idea." And I said, "Nobody did. Nobody did." Because I kept a lot of that to myself. So they've been very supportive. They know why I'm doing this, as I say, to raise awareness. It's not something that's talked about, and I'm the first to admit I didn't talk about it in all these years because of fear and shame and embarrassment. And you know, at first it was more like survival because I was trying to make a way for myself and living and raising kids. And then once they started growing and getting out, getting out and flying the coop, so they say, I just kind of put it on the back burner. It's like, okay, this happened. It's just, my life is part of my life, and, move on. But I started having this stirring that God wanted more from me. And it came to be writing the book and writing the story. So far, I've gotten several great reviews. You can see them on Amazon. Everybody's been very supportive. I've had a lot of people come up to me individually and just thank me for bringing light to the situation, to this topic.
I'm definitely glad that, you're not catching slack about that. I definitely wanted to know because, a lot of the times we are suppressed by just thinking about, what other people might think about it. So I'm glad you're able to at least, tell your life experience in a supportive space.
I think if anything, I was the one that was most, once it's like, am I really ready to do this? Because, the first thing that goes through your mind is, what are people going to think? And you're kind of afraid of, what are they going to judge? What are they going to say? And I had to move past that. And it's not about me and what people are going to think of me. It's what I can do to help others. So I had to change my mindset. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And it's what we're all going to do to help others. And that's why we are sharing life experiences to help others that are going through similar situations. We are almost at time. So I'm going to let Sid go ahead, ask your last question, and then we're going to go ahead and I'm going to close it out.
All right. So this is we've kind of, touched on what you're going or what you are currently doing, with career, with getting the message out, all of that. But we just like to take a second for you to kind of, cohesively put it together. Shout yourself out, shameless plug. Let everybody know what you're working on, where they can go to possibly contact you, work with you, any way that our viewers can network if they so choose. Let them know how they can get in contact.
Sure, thank you. The best way is through the website, www.brokentoboldness.com. You can order an autographed copy through the website. I also have, by signing up with your email address, you can get a free cheat sheet basically on some of the red flags of gaslighting. I also have resources, including the phone number for the National Domestic Violence Hotline on there. I have other podcasts and stuff that I've done, as well as I've started both an audio blog on Swell and a written blog through my website. So I'm trying just to get the word out and just doing the educating and stuff basically through my website. You can also purchase the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, As I say, next week, if anybody's in the Coachella Valley, come see me. It's called the Vault. It's in Cathedral City. So I'll be there from 3 to 5, help promoting and educating on domestic violence. And, if anybody has any events that they want, and they want looking for a speaker, I'm happy to come and talk about it. Let's see, what else can I say? I'm just excited about the future, and again, about bringing the end to or help bring the end to domestic violence. We all just need to be nicer to each other. Take a moment to step back before you say or do anything, because once you say it or once you do it, you can't take it back. So just let's all just be kind. I just like to end that on that. Be kind.
I love it. And you hit it on the nail. Be kind to one another. And, as I always say, you never know what one is going through, and you never know who you're sitting next to and the traumas that they have been
Absolutely.
through. So we want to thank you for tuning into Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast. And again, I hope Debbie connected with someone that is going through a similar trauma to help you, because as we know, there are a lot of narcissistic behaviors out here in relationships and a lot of gaslighting in relationships. So know the red flags, and typically narcissists and those that gaslight are taking over control. And as you heard Debbie talk about, he isolated her from everyone, from her parents to her friends and anyone that came into her life. Her ex-husband pushed everyone away. And I understand, because I have been through that. And Debbie, thank you for being transparent about how the relationship traumatized your kids. So we also want to bring awareness. If you have kids, be mindful of the kids, because these traumas do affect our children. And how do we protect the children as well? And that is to try to find an exit plan out of the relationship, because as we know, typically when you say that you're leaving, that's when the relationship gets more violent, and that's when most are harmed the worst. So let's bring awareness to domestic violence, childhood traumas. Again, narcissistic behaviors and gaslighting is real. So look out for the red flags and protect yourself. And again, we will see you next Sunday at 7 p.m. ET, and we're going to keep bringing life experiences to you to help others going through similar situations.